Whispers on the Midnight Plains. Beneath the golden afternoon sun, Emma squinted across the wide-open plains, shielding her eyes as she watched the silhouette of a lone cowboy riding toward her. She'd been warned about him, the mysterious Rider Black, a man with a reputation as wild as the land he roamed. Her uncle, the ranch foreman, had hired him for the season's roundup, but Emma's curiosity had been piqued long before she'd ever seen him. Today, with her heart pounding in sync with each steady hoofbeat, she finally had her chance to see him up close. Ryder reined his horse to a stop, tipping his hat, his hazel eyes catching the light as he studied her with a mixture of surprise and intrigue. "Ma'am," he greeted her in that slow, honeyed drawl. "Rider Black, I presume," she replied, tilting her chin just enough to appear composed, though her heart raced. "Guilty as charged." His smile, though barely there, was enough to set her pulse racing. As they worked together through the afternoon, her hands growing dusty, her boots worn, she found herself stealing glances at him. He was a man of few words, but every now and then, she'd catch him watching her with a look that said more than he ever spoke. By sunset, when the cattle had been herded and the last glimmer of daylight cast everything in a warm glow, Ryder looked at her. "Care to take a walk with me?" His voice was low, almost a whisper against the evening stillness. They strolled in silence, the only sounds their footsteps and the distant calls of coyotes. Beneath a sky filled with the first stars, Ryder stopped and turned to her. "Emma," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard, "I never thought I'd find someone who could make me want to stay in one place. Until now." Her breath caught as his hand found hers, rough yet gentle. In that moment, Emma felt it, too, a pull stronger than any boundary or fence line. They stood there in the quiet, wrapped in the endless night, until Ryder leaned in, his lips brushing hers in a kiss that tasted like the promise of forever. The stars hung bright and close in the midnight blue sky as Emma and Ryder stood together, the chill of the desert night making their warmth feel more intense. Ryder's hand lingered on hers, his thumb tracing small circles that sent sparks up her arm. He looked down at her, a mix of vulnerability and hope in his gaze, as if he wasn't sure how she might react to his invitation. "What do you say we take a ride?" he asked, his voice a soft rumble against the silence. Without a second thought, Emma nodded, feeling a thrill she hadn't felt in a long time. Ryder helped her up onto his horse, climbing up behind her, and with a gentle nudge, they were off, moving slowly under the moonlight. Emma leaned back, feeling the solid warmth of Ryder against her, his arms strong and steady as they rode across the open plain. The world seemed vast and still, with only the occasional soft rustle of a sagebrush in the wind and the comforting rhythm of the horse's hooves. They rode until they reached a little ridge that overlooked the valley, with the ranch below stretching out in the distance. Ryder brought the horse to a halt and helped Emma down. He spread out a blanket he'd tucked behind the saddle, and they settled down beside each other, shoulder to shoulder, staring out over the quiet beauty of the land. Ryder glanced at her, his face softened by the moonlight. "I used to think I'd just keep moving, like the wind, never really belonging anywhere," he murmured. "But tonight, I'm starting to wonder if maybe I was just waiting to find the right place to stop." Emma felt her heart swell. She'd been so cautious, her days full of hard work and her nights full of quiet dreams, yet here she was, sitting on a blanket under the stars with a man who seemed to see right into her soul. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the same hope she saw in his. "Maybe you found it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. They spent hours talking under that sky, sharing stories of childhood, dreams, and the hopes they barely dared to admit out loud. Ryder spoke of his family ranch, and Emma shared her memories of learning to ride as a little girl, the feeling of freedom and adventure she'd always yearned for. Before dawn, Ryder took her hand once more. "Emma," he said, brushing a stray curl from her cheek, "what would you say to meeting me here, same time, next Saturday?" Her smile answered before she could speak. "I'd say I'd be counting the days." They lingered just a little longer, until the horizon began to lighten with the softest hues of dawn. With one last look, Ryder helped her onto his horse again, and they rode back slowly, savoring every moment before they'd have to go their separate ways for the day. But as Emma dismounted at the ranch gate, Ryder's fingers slipped into hers once more, and he whispered, "Next Saturday can't come soon enough."